Alright, so let's talk about diagnosis and malfunctions. Now, I'm not asking you to be a doctor. You don't have to diagnose yourself on WebMD or anything like that, because we all know anytime you put your symptoms in, eventually everything leads to cancer and death. So we definitely don't want that to happen, but we want to kind of give you an overview of how to diagnose any kind of malfunctions in your vehicle itself. One of the reasons why we are so why we keep the pre-trip inspection so important to actually getting yourself a CDL license is to actually help you out with this skill itself. If you understand how the pre-trip inspection works both inside and outside, you're pretty much able to diagnose and catch things when they're small before they get into a big problem. So the biggest help that you're going to have when it comes to diagnosing an issue is going to be, boom, your dashboard. So we talked about the dashboard already. There's a few gauges in here, and that's pretty much your cockpit of your airplane, of your pilot, right? If you're a pilot on a plane. So main things to watch out for is going to be, of course, your fuel. So if all of a sudden you can't move and you see your fuel's on E, you just diagnosed the problem. You ain't got no fuel, and now you got to prime the pump inside the engine, which is not a fun thing to do. It has happened a few times, especially in the cold is the worst. But if you just watch the gauge, make sure you don't run out of fuel. Something else could be where, say, you try to turn on the vehicle, and all of a sudden nothing turns on. You turn the key to the on position and you look at your voltmeter's at 10, or maybe it's below 10. That means you don't have enough charge to actually have the engine get started. You want to have at least a 12 volts to actually start up your vehicle itself. So that's another way to kind of diagnose it. If you all of a sudden start seeing smoke coming out of the vehicle, or you start hearing your engine starting the fan to go on fast, you want to check your water temperature gauge. So the maximum for the water temperature gauge, if you remember what we talked about before, is going to be 200 degrees. Once it starts getting over 200 degrees, you have a problem. You either have not enough coolant inside there, or you have a problem with the water pump, or something inside there is getting messed up. So you definitely want to get that checked out ASAP, right? And then when it comes to the oil pressure, if your oil pressure is too low, or it's sky high, that means you're also going to have a problem with your engine itself, so you definitely want to make sure you're checking that out. So your gauges are definitely a great way to check any kind of malfunctions, and most of the time those are the 4 gauges that actually are the most important, and that's why we talk to you about it, because many of the main issues on a truck, besides electrical of course, is going to happen based on those 4 gauges itself. Now there are instances where wacky things can happen, just like in a car, where the more computers they put into these vehicles as the time goes on, the more electronics kind of play into this, which means that you're going to need somebody with a tech background and a laptop to kind of diagnose what's going on if the check engine light comes on, as an example, right? So stuff like that makes it harder without any equipment, but that's pretty much the basics when it comes to diagnosing what's going on and how to fix the problem. Most of the time, check your gauges, make sure you have all the proper fluids in there, and making sure that you catch things while they're small versus when they're super big. So that's pretty much it for diagnosis. Let's get on to the next one.